just have the +1 game. I think that would be the best system. The college football would still make money. The teams would still have to play. They would be forced to, if they want to play late in January, or early in January, I should say, to schedule quality early season games. That would make the college football season great. John, thanks for hanging on there. Can I get your thoughts on the BCS and how you think it should work?
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with the BCS. Like just mentioned, it usually determines two of the best teams, but there's one system in my mind that really that I'm really attracted to because there's a backup net. It's the +1 system. It's exactly like the BCS, except after all the BCS games have been played, we have one more game versus who really is number 1 and 2 after all the other games have been played. I think it's a good compromise for all these people that want the playoff and all these, well, there's not a lot of people left who really want the BCS to stay alive, but I think it's a good compromise, and it wouldn't come with all of the things that are bad about the playoff system, which nobody really talks about. I think you're right, though.
Keep going.
I think you're right, though, about the preseason polls are given far too much weight. The Harris poll, which counts in the BCS equation, starts at week 4 or 5, I think, and I really like that poll better because it really gives you a good idea of who actually is in the top 25 when you first come out with one. Because the preseason, you're just guessing, just making estimated guesses.
And therefore, then, too, it's nearly impossible for a team ranked in the teens or in the 20s who's beating quality competition, maybe a Pac-10 team playing in a quality conference right now, to really make that rise up to number 1 or 2 when I'm not picking on Ohio State here because they did schedule Miami, but they played what? Ohio, Akron, and they played 3 patsies, yet Boise's punished. Oregon's likely could be punished later because you got those 3 wins on your plate. You know, if the poll comes out later, I think that makes teams play a better schedule, have more quality wins, and I think if anything's wrong with college football, it's the preseason poll in my mind. But in the end, I do think the BCS works. And while we're on the BCS, John, who do you think is going to be 1 and 2 this week?
This week, I took a look at the computer-only poll, which does take into effect the Harris and USA Today coaches poll, but it also factors in strength of schedule and your record, and it throws margin of victory out the window. Does the computer poll? So I took a crack at it. Ohio State is ranked number 10 in that poll. So you mentioned the weak competition from Ohio State. The computer poll punishes Ohio State for it. And I'm confident that Ohio State will not actually be number 1 or 2 once the BCS poll is released.
I read about 5 or 6 is what I kind of came up with. And I think that's about right, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's perfectly fair. I mean, you mentioned that Ohio, I think Youngstown State was in there.
That's the other one, yes. Yeah, how could we ever forget an epic matchup against Youngstown State?
Yeah, that's fun. Jim Tressel just left that one.
Since we were talking here, and I hope you don't mind staying on for a little bit with us, because we really wanted to talk college football last week and just didn't work out, so we wanted to get some stuff in here. And I went through all the writing and stuff I do, and I went through and I looked at team schedules. And, some will cancel each on the end, but it is possible that 7 teams can finish the year undefeated this year. And that's where I think the BCS comes into trouble, and that's where I don't want to see a team like an Ohio State who, I still think they could lose the game along the way. But I'm going to throw you a couple names out. You tell me if they're for real, if they can run the table. We already did Ohio State, Oregon, and Boise last week. We think they all could be fine. I think Oregon, game against the Trojans could scare me, too. I think that one's in USC. But let's start with TCU at number 4, John. They had a couple of non-conference wins. It's possible they can run the table too. Yeah, it is possible they can run the table. And honestly, when the computer poll comes into effect in the BCS, I think in the end, if both Boise State and TCU did run the table,
you'd probably see the Horned Frogs ranked ahead of Boise State, simply because the Horned Frogs still have Air Force, Utah, BYU not as much, but still a much better in-conference schedule than Boise State does. I think it's perfectly plausible that they run the table. Obviously, the big roadblock is a trip to Salt Lake City to play Utah. That's a tough game. Utah's a good team, but I think TCU has all the skills. They've obviously got the defense, and they got the winningest quarterback in TCU history, in Andy Dalton. Maybe that is a credit to his defense as well, but he can throw the ball. I think TCU's got a good shot.
I'll talk three other teams real quick, and we'll move on to another topic. A couple Big 12 teams, Nebraska and Oklahoma. I think they're both talented enough to run the table, and if they do, they have to. You know, the Big 12's a little bit down this year. I think they have to get involved in talks. And the team I'm looking at most is Oklahoma, because they get past Texas, John. They don't have Nebraska on the schedule unless it's in the Big 12 title game. The only ranked team left that the Sooners face is Missouri, and I believe that one's at Missouri. But still, the schedule favors Oklahoma, unlike any other team in the top 25, to finish undefeated.
Yeah, Oklahoma certainly has a favorable schedule from here. I mean, they've played sketchy games this season. I mean, if they play like they did against Utah State versus Missouri, that's probably Tigers' advantage. But we could say that about a lot of teams. I mean, yeah, Oklahoma, again, you mentioned, has all the skills, because they usually have all the skills. It's Oklahoma. But you're right, that favorable schedule is really what I look at more. Probably looking at an undefeated Oklahoma. But you mentioned the favorable schedule. You stack that schedule against others like even Ohio State, which strength of schedule will beefen up once again in the Big Ten play and probably end up being stronger than Oklahoma at the end of the season. I think if there are plenty of other teams that could also go undefeated that would finish ahead of Oklahoma. So the Sooners will have to rely on some other things.
How many, at the end of the day, this last BCS question, and Jess will have something for you here. At the end of the day, how many undefeated teams are we going to see after the conference championship games?
You'll probably see Oklahoma, TCU, Boise State, and Oregon. That's what I'm going to stick with. I think Ohio State will slip up, but I don't think the Ducks will. So just those four.
You got anything for John there, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to comment on, I would be surprised, and the team I'm kind of looking at right now is going to kind of be the buster for Oregon, is that rivalry game, Oregon State. I'm keeping my eye on them. They've been playing really, really well, and in fact, every single time that Oregon State wins, that is going to help TCU, and that is going to help Boise because of the schedule that they have. Every time they win, that helps them. I think Oregon State is a sleeper there in the Pac-10 because they are playing as good as football. They've got cats. They're playing lights out right now.
Yeah, he was inexperienced at the beginning, but he grew up pretty quickly. He's now without James Rodgers. That's gonna hurt. Rodgers is the all-purpose leader in Oregon State history. But overcoming Rodgers, I think, is something that his brother Jacques is capable of, and something that Cass, I think, is capable of as well. I think Oregon State could, if Oregon State upsets Oregon, then it might be a Boise State TCU national championship game. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Well, you know what? Wow. I mean, especially after last year when those teams were kept out, if those two teams would meet for the national title, the BCS would just be on its head. I think it would be. I think it would be a great title game. I really do. It would be entertaining. It would be great. Jess, you got any Heisman stuff for John?
I want to find out, John. What do you think? After Denard Robinson's performance being kind of, as they call it, exposed against Michigan State, do you think he still has the inside run, or Terrell Pryor, would you say, or Kellen Moore is the one coming ahead now with what happened last week with Robinson in Michigan?
I mean, Denard Robinson is human for one game. I don't think that destroys his Heisman chances, and I think I would still put him very close to the top. Obviously, there's still a lot of football to be played. people can prove themselves. One, LaMichael James is certainly